rolling.
Are we rolling?
Yeah.
This is specific because we have to do this for y'all.
Yes. This
Go
is
ahead, baby.
this is all formal and proper.
That's
okay.
right.
All right.
Do you want
Today,
music to accompany it?
do you want to hum?
I'll do some music. Go
Okay,
ahead.
give me some. All right, thank you.
Let me hear the tenor of what you're reading.
Today is June the 6th, 2018. Oh, that's nice.
Thank you.
I'm Dan Pasternak, and I am here with Whoopi Goldberg.
C'est moi.
C'est toi? Oui? For the Television Academy Foundation's The Interviews, an oral history of television. And
Can you say that?
yeah. Oh,
Oral history, isn't that like a little
they may have to like fix it in post.
spoken history?
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
I like that.
Better,
Okay,
better.
all
No
right.
questions asked.
All right. Note to the TV Academy. And, not to be outdone, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences Visual History Program. And we are here in New York City.
Yes, we are.
Let's do this.
All right.
Cool. All right.
Bum, bum, bum.
Bum, bum, bum.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was climactic or anticlimactic.
I think it was very climactic.
Oh.
And they don't have another one like that.
Oh, well, I'm glad it was good for you then. All right, so we like to take a few minutes to get some like background stuff at the beginning.
Okay.
So we're gonna go all the way back, rewind the tape all the way back.
I
Talk
was
about
born in the back of a traveling show. My mother used to dance for the money they'd throw. Papa did the best he could.
Are you gonna do the entire thing as a musical?
I was going to, but
Whoopi the musical.
Whoopi the musical, how scary is that?
I would love that.
Oh, honey, can you imagine?
Yes, I
Can
can.
you imagine?
Yes.
You know, what's this weed? Why am I smoking it?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yes.
Okay, so just take us back. Tell us a little about your childhood, where you grew up, and the circumstances of your youth.
Oh, okay. I grew up in Chelsea in Manhattan, 26th Street and 10th Avenue, in the Elliott Chelsea projects. I had a rather great childhood. I had an extraordinary mother and a really fine big brother. And I didn't realize we were poor because everybody was in the same socioeconomic groove as I was. So we could do everything in New York. You know, it didn't cost anything to get on the bus, really, to go up to the newly built Lincoln Center or to go to the Met or to go to the New York Public Library. I went to Catholic school. I went to St. Columba between 8th and 9th Avenue on 26th Street. I finished the 8th grade, and then I graduated and went to high school, Julia Richmond, for about 20 minutes. School was not my thing. And I think I probably went for about 8 months, and I said to my mother, I can't do this. And she said, okay, if you're going to not go to school, you have to go to every place you can that's giving lectures. You have to go through, we'll go through and make a list. And so that's how I spent much of my, what would have been considered my high school years. Going to lectures and listening to stuff, and then I was required.
Becoming self-educated.
Yeah, and I was required to come home and explain what I'd done all day.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was very lucky to have the woman that I had raising me, because my mother was really smart about, she knew what something was up with me, because I was dyslexic. But she didn't know what it was. She knew I wasn't undiagnosed, because they didn't have it as a thing at the time. But she also knew I didn't lie to her except once. When I was a kid, I lied.
What was the one lie?
Well, so I love the Nutcracker Suite. And so every year I would go see it, you know, at the ballet. Because it didn't cost anything really if you're a kid. So you spent a quarter, you got on the bus, you went up and saw it. You know, it was great. You had the money, it was great. So my mother says, okay, now, before you go, I want you to clean this room up, because I was basically a slob as a kid. And she said, I'm not, you know, I'm not going to say it but once. Clean this room up. Okay, I say. And so she goes, and the bad Whoopi pops up. or the bad Karen. Let's say the bad Karen pops up and says, "You'll be back before she is. What are you doing? Let's go. We got stuff to do, things to see." And then the good Whoopi popped up and said, "No, I don't think so. I think that it's not a good idea. You should really listen to your mother. Clean the room. It won't take but 5 minutes." And so the bad Whoop came over and kicked the good Whoopi off, and out I went. And I believe I locked the door. I believe I locked the door. So I went and I saw the Nutcracker. It was marvelous. The cake grew, the mouse got bigger, everything that was supposed to happen happened. I get on the bus, I go back home, I go upstairs, and I have no key. I cannot get in the house. Now, the reason I say I know I had the key is because I know I locked the door. Or did my mother come back, realize I left the key in the house, and lock the door and see what I was going to do? So there I am in the hallway pacing. Now, kids are dumb. So I'm thinking, oh, if I can go out, we lived on the 6th floor. Did I mention that part? Mm-hmm. Okay. If I can go out the window and creepy crawl across to the ledge and open the window from outside, I might be able to get in. Now, you couldn't get out the window, but these are the things I was contemplating because everyone was gone. My brother wasn't there.
How old would you have been?
Probably 9, okay. 10, 11, in that realm in there. And so I'm thinking of all these ways I can get in the house because, the housing authority is gone, the office is closed, everything. I can't get in, nobody has a key. So now I have to wait. And I wait, and I'm in a panic, man. I'm like, oh. And I see my mother. She's this big as she's walking, walking around the building to come up to the building. Now, I'm looking at her, and what I see, I'm sure, is not what happened. What I saw was this. And so now she comes up the elevator, and she comes through, and she says, "Hello, Karen." "Hi, Ma." "Hi." And she says, why are you out here?" I said, I can't find my key. So she says, "Oh." And she gets to the door to put her key in, and she just, in my opinion, she got this wide, and then she got that high, and I couldn't get around her because in my child mind, I thought I can rush through the door, get to my room, clean it up, all before she is able to get through the door. So, but she is aware of what I'm trying to do. And so she's moving this way and moving, and so I can't get around her. And so we get in, and she manages to reach the closet door, which if you opened it, cut off any way of getting to the back. So, and she says, "You seem very jittery. Are you all right?" I said, "Yes, I'm fine. I'm good." She says, "Oh, how was the Nutcracker?" I said, "It was great. It was great. It was wonderful. I had a great time." And I realized when my mother opens the door that my brother, in the old days, in the parks in New York, you had arts and crafts. And so my brother made a braided belt, leather, and it's hanging in there. And I'm thinking, who made that belt? Why is that belt in there? And I'm thinking, man, this is not going to bode well for me because now she's going to say, and she did, "Did you clean your room?" And I say, knowing what I'm supposed to say, which is, "No, I didn't. I'll take my medicine." Instead, I do this. "Uh-huh. Yeah." She says, "Oh, so your room is clean." Second time, I should be saying, "No, I lied. I know, no."
That's what they call a perjury trap.
And then she says for the third time, "So if I go back there, your room is clean." I should be saying, "I'm falling on my knife. No, I didn't clean my room." But that's not what I say. I say, "Yeah, It's clean. So my mother goes to the back. And of course, the room is not clean. And she comes out and she says, you know, it's so funny. That's not my idea of a clean room. I said, I know. Sorry. She says, now, I hate to have to do this, but I'm going to do this because the lie you told was so obvious that I want to make sure that you never forget this. And when I tell you she tanned my hide, I mean,
With that braided
with
belt?
my brother's braided belt. Asshole. Such an asshole. Yeah. But it was the last time I lied to my mother. It was the last time I lied to her, because her point was lies like that can get you killed. And if you're going to lie, be fabulous. You know, be fabulous, which is why I I perform the way that I do.
You cultivated your fabulousness.
Yes, I tried. I tried. So, but that was a digression into what was basically a huge lesson for me. Huge lesson for me. She said, I need you to know never to do this again.
But she also did encourage this love of the arts that you have.
Well, listen, my mother grew up at a time, you didn't question. You didn't lie. You didn't do stuff like that because they were not playing with you. You know, lying or making yourself bigger could get people killed. Remember, I grew up in 55. No, I was born in 55. So by the time I turned 10 or 11, you know, Emmett Till had already happened.
Right.
You know, there were lots of things that you needed to know as a black kid that was specific to you, you know. And when someone told you to jump, you jumped and you didn't ask questions. So, as I said, you know, it only took one time for me. But she was, you know, she loved the movies, she loved the arts, she loved ballet, she loved everything that New York had to offer. And she never thought for 1 minute that because we didn't have oodles of money that we couldn't participate in everything. Because in those days, you know, a lot of this stuff was free.
So
You could go
other
to the
than
museums.
the Nutcracker, what were some of the other early pieces of film or television or theater that made an impact on young Whoopi or young Karen?
Well, I mean, when we could, we went to see as many things as was possible, because in those days they had student tickets, you know, so you could go see James Earl Jones in The Great White Hope, you know, and I'm telling you, when I saw that piece, I always feel like I was right here, like I'm right where y'all are, but I was way back in the back, but he was so big and so dynamic that I was like, oh my God, this is extraordinary. My mother took me to go see, my God, The Magnificent Seven in the movie theater. I saw In the Heat of the Night in the movie theater, and that was extraordinary because, you know, it was that moment, right, when Sidney Poitier is in that glass thing, where the guy, you know, is doing all the potting stuff.
Right.
And Sidney comes in and he says, this is what happened, and this is what happened, and this is what happened. And the white guy goes over and slaps the shit out of him. And Sidney then slapped him back. When I tell you, the entire theater stood up and went, oh my God, Sidney! You know, it's like, it was a game changer. It was a game changer because, you know, when you look at the movies that sort of preceded me, they were very different, and you never saw that response. And Sidney changed a whole lot of stuff with that. You know, it said to people, oh my God, I don't have to do this. I don't have to take this. And it particularly did it for older black folks who had come up from the South. who had a different relationship to white people than I did, because I grew up around white people. And it was never, you're different, I'm different. We were all poor and we all ate at each other's houses, you know. But for grandparents, you know, who came up from the South, it was a different thing. You didn't have conversations. I had little white boyfriends and little Spanish boyfriends and little, you know, Greek boyfriend. You know, I was popular. You know, but when you're a kid, you're running with everybody. You're not looking at who's black, who's white. That wasn't the neighborhood I grew up in, so I didn't know. So when all these adults literally stood up and went, Sydney, it was like, oh snap, what just happened? And then my mother explained it to me.
How'd that make you feel?
Which part?
Seeing that scene and then being in the middle of that visceral reaction.
I could probably say it's that turning moment where you understood what you were seeing on the news. Because remember, at this time, people are marching and they're just trying to vote in the South. And so you're seeing all this and you kind of, because adults didn't talk to kids really. They didn't really tell you a lot of what was going on, but you heard little bits and pieces, you know, of these people are trying to vote. And, well, what do you mean they're trying to vote? What, you know, because you grow up in New York, you think everybody could vote. You know, but that was not necessarily the case. So that was happening, and Sydney smacking a man back was happening, and, you know, in my early teenage years, you know, the yuppies and the hippies were happening, and so there was all of that. So and camp, I went to camp, so I was at camp with counselors who were young people who were wanting to change the world at the time. So my whole childhood was kind of a whirlwind of the world needs to change and you can help do it. So that's why I'm as, you know, annoying to people, because I actually believe we can do stuff. Yeah. You know, that's why I used to just marry everybody. Because I didn't know why I shouldn't if I liked them. I didn't stay married, but, you know. But I liked the idea that, for me, it was about the people. You know, it was about people and how you related to them and what they learned from you and what you learned from them. So that's basically a big part of my growing up, you know.
All right, so now you left New York in the 70s.
Yeah.
Talk about where you went and then how you started to kind of chase this dream of being a performer.
Well, the dream, I was born with the dream. It was, you know, I wasn't necessarily born in a trunk, but it was always going to be the theater. It was always going to be the theater. I was always going to be an actor. It was never a question. And so I got married, and I had a baby, and then...
How old were you then?
Probably 19.
Wow.
Well, but that's, you know, you were supposed to get married at 19. You were supposed to have babies. But I didn't like it so much. I mean, I liked the baby. I didn't like being married so much because I felt that there was more expected of me than I was willing to give. You know, marriage is a partnership, and I don't think I really ever wanted a partner. So it didn't last as long as I would have liked it to, because you figure you should at least be married a couple of years before you bail, but it didn't work that way. But I went.
The results may vary.
Well, results may vary. Things look bigger in the mirror. And so I was working at the Hudson Guild on a show. I was stage managing, I think, and started talking to this actor, and my kid was the same age as his kid, and his wife had passed or something. And talked, and he said, well, if you want to come out and be a nanny, come out to California and be a nanny with my kid. I was like, okay, how's this work? He said, well, we're going to go to Lubbock, Texas first.
Whoa.
Because, yeah, Lubbock, Texas first, oil and cotton. And then we're going to drive to San Diego. And I said, what? To what? Because I'd never heard of San Diego. You know, because when you watch Hullabaloo or any of those shows on TV, it was always Los Angeles. So I didn't know there were other places inside of California. I don't know what I thought, but I didn't know. And so I said to my mom, "Hey, I'm gonna go to California with this guy. I'm gonna be nanny to his kid." And my mother's like, "What? Wait, what?" I said, "Yeah, I think I need to do this." And so about 2 months later, she said, "Okay." So we went. And we drove to Lubbock, Texas. And I saw my first bout of dinner theater, which was kind of interesting. They were doing Please Don't, no, not Please Don't Eat the Flowers.
Please don't eat the daisies?
Please Don't Eat the Days. No, there's something about water. I don't know. It was some crazy combination of shows. I have to write 50 years ago. I don't know. But so I watched people do this, and then periodically I would slip in and do a little something because an actor needed to go. So, and then we drove to San Diego, where it turned out I wasn't a very good nanny. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about nannying, but I wanted to go to California. I saw it on television, you know.
So how did you get started performing in San Diego?
Well, he was part of a group called the San Diego Rep. And so when we got there and realized that it was not going to work out, I had to figure out what to do, you know. So someone said, "Well, you should probably go over to the welfare office and see if they can help you out with some food stamps until you get a job." So I did that, and they said, "Well, you can't work." I was like, "What do you mean I can't work? I have to work." They were like, "If we're giving you food stamps, you can't work." And they sent $31 a month. No, it was $64 a month. So $32 on the first of the month and $32 the second.
For you and your daughter?
Uh-huh. And now listen, it was a long time ago. We're talking, you know, early 70s. Oh, yeah, kind of late 70s, actually. You know, 77, 78. So it's late. But that sustained us. But I didn't understand why I could not work. And so whenever they would do auditions at the Rep, you know, I'd go over there, and then they got NEA grants. So I applied for those. And, you know, when you get welfare, they take the money out of whatever. If you get a job, they take the money away. So you have to kind of try to figure out how to do it all. I can say to this day I'm all paid up. I've paid them. I literally paid them everything back. I still have a copy of my Medi-Cal card because I never ever wanted to forget those days and explaining to people, because, you know, people used to say, "Oh, all those welfare mothers." Like, nah, that was good for many years, and nobody wants to stay on welfare because in those days they could knock on your door at any time of the day and night, and you couldn't have a man in the house, you couldn't have a television, you had to be able to explain where you got books from. I mean, it was very intrusive. You couldn't really do anything, and you were so sick of people just popping up that you wanted to find a way to get these get these people out of your life.
You can use whatever language.
I know, but if you're gonna show this in the future, like in 50, I don't want them to think that I was totally vulgar. Semi-vulgar, not totally. So it was important for me to get off of it, because I just felt like you should have some dignity when you're in need, you know, because it was set up to help people get to where they needed to get to. So,
but now you started to get some traction as a performer when you were in San Diego.
Yeah, that took a couple of years. We were doing a lot of improv. That's when I met Robin, because he used to come to the oh my God, Mitzi just passed. It was a Comedy Store.
Comedy Store in La Jolla.
In La Jolla, and perform. And there were a couple of different people who were working, so we had different groups, again, with NEA money, where you go and you do, you're supposed to explain to school children about ore, So you go and you'd write a show and you'd go to some school and you go, I'm a mountain. And within me lies ore, gold, beneath the earth, alive in its own glory. And you'd explain how ore is taken out of the earth. Or you'd go and you'd talk about, coal. Not this kind of coal, but coal. I mean, you're working. It's good. And what else? We did a couple of different crazy things. So it was a group of us, and we morphed into something called spontaneous combustion.
Right.
And from there, we did lots of different weird plays. And then some of us would go over to the Comedy Store and start improv and do stuff. And that's how I met Robin. And just had a good time. And then, a couple of years went by, I met another guy who said, hey, how you doing? I was like, how you doing? And we hung out because he came down from San Francisco with another group. And I had been performing with a partner. I had a partner at the time, Don. It'll come to me. Shit. Do you know?
Not off the top of my head. Let me see.
There it is.
Don Victor.
Thank you. Whose hand is that, first of all?
Credit where credit is due.
Hello. Don Victor. Okay. So Don Victor and I were performing around, and this guy that was really kind of interesting started hanging out, and they came down from San Francisco and did their shows, and I let them stay on my floor because I lived in a tree with my daughter. And so all those performers from San Francisco, the Blake Street Hawkeyes, came and stayed and lived on my floor. And so I was had some fun, smoked a lot of pot and talked, and then they came and saw my show and they said, you should come back with us. You should come stay with us and do all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, So I said to my kid, who was probably 7 by then, what do you think? You want to try something new? She was like, where are we going? I said, well, it's San Francisco. I don't know. You want to see what it is? And she was like, yeah. So we packed up a Volkswagen that had no brakes, that you had to stop with a handbrake, and we drove to San Francisco to Project Artaud, which was a building, a warehouse building that was 1, 2, 3, I think it was 6 blocks. And it was filled with dancers and performers and singers and writers and playwrights and the Pickle Family Circus, and just, it was filled with all kinds of stuff, and it was just amazing. It was an amazing time, and the guy that I went up there with got me a place to stay with some friends of his who were gone for several months, and we stayed in their apartment. It was oh, I'm sorry.
What are you trying to think?
There was a story this morning about a father and son that were missing, and I just looked up and they found them both dead in a car. It's hard, it's gone now, but it a lot of death. Kate Spade, a lot. Anyway.
So listen, because I know we have a limited amount of time, while you were
I have
in...
a very long life. I'm so sorry.
Well, by the way, we
yes.
will take as much time as you will give us.
All right.
But I am told we have a limited amount of time.
All right.
So I know that while you were up in the Bay Area is when you started developing your one-woman show, which becomes like a big turning point.
Okay, so the guy, see, you can't tell that story without the guy.
Okay.
I got to finish up with Otto and all that shit. So, the guy and I decided we were going to try to make a go of it. My kid liked him, and I liked him, and so we then moved to Berkeley with the Blake Street Hawkeyes, where we were doing all kinds of Artodian poetry and, singing sound poems, all kinds of crazy, wonderful stuff. And my partner, Dave Shine, had written a piece for himself to do called Out Comes Butch. And he said, well, you should put something together so that we can go tour together. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I kept saying, yeah, I'll do it. And then we went to Europe with his show and spent some time in France and spent some time in London. And I started writing about the trip. And so we went to Germany.
Right.
We went we hit like 7 places. Because you do it exchange, right? So you'd go to Germany and exchange your space with theirs. So you'd live in their space, they'd live in your space, and you perform for however many. We went to Amsterdam, where, again, we lived in this guy's house, and he was performing in Berkeley. And so we got to spend a lot of time. I performed at a place called the Milk Fig, which was actually kind of fabulous, still there. It has, in Amsterdam you can buy hash, weed, anything you could possibly need. So this place, the Milk Fig, was a performance space. So you could go in there and buy whatever you need, and it was like a haze and performance nights because I didn't go on until 10, so the whole place was smoked out. Somebody was smoking something always because you could go to these different places and buy. So, I'm collecting stuff. It was really great. Then, when it's time to go, my partner said, you can't take any of this with you, right? I was like, what do you mean? I bought all of it. He said, no, you can't take it with you. You have to get rid of it. We can't take it. So we're on the train. So I eat everything. No one says to me, hey, dummy, don't eat hash. 5 or 6 things of hash. It's going to really make you sick. So I'm on the train. We're driving. We're going along, and I'm like, well, I don't feel good. I don't feel good. I'm kind of, oh, my God. And I get, I literally almost start foaming at the mouth when we hear, passport. Dave throws me over, and he says, oh, she's having a fit. She's having a fit. Here's her passport. This happens to her all the time. So that's how I was able to get out of, back into where I was supposed to be. Anyway, I digress. So when I came back, I wanted to tell people what I'd seen because one of the stops that I'd made was to the Anne Frank house, which really sort of knocked me out. It really knocked me out because you're in this building and when I was a kid, you saw Millie Perkins do the film where she played Anne Frank. And you're suddenly in the building and you walk in and there's an Oscar because Shelley Winters gave them her Oscar. And I thought, wow, that's random. Because I'd never seen an Oscar before, but there one was in the Anne Frank house.
So that's the first Oscar you've ever seen?
That was the first Oscar I'd ever seen in my whole life. I mean, I watched it on television. We watched it every year. But physically, it was right there. And I thought, boy, he's kind of tall. Because it was like this big. And Shelley Winters, And then you go around and you see this thing, this sort of, it looks like a wall. It's just a wall. And then you realize that it's actually, you pull it and you go up and you sort of walk through these rooms and there are all the movie stars on the wall that she loved because she always put movie stars on her wall. And there's where Mrs. Van Damme and Mr. Van Damme stayed, and that's the little alcove where they went to. I mean, it it changed my whole perspective, because when you come down, when you look on the wall, they had all these quotes, and they had a giant quote that said, you know, in spite of everything, I still believe there's good in people. And you know, I could not understand it. I didn't understand it. And I knew I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so Dave said to me when we got back, you know, I got an invitation to go do a bunch of shows. Do you have something you want to do? And so I thought, I want to talk about this experience, but I don't want to do a travelogue. I could put this in the mouth of a junkie. That's somebody, that would be unusual to hear it from them. And so that's what I did. And then I started thinking about all the other shit that was bugging me. Like abortion, people not understanding why women made those kinds of choices sometimes. And why would you keep that? Why would you want somebody not to be able to say, I need this kind of help? So I thought, okay. And so these group of people sort of showed up in my head. And so there's, you know, and the little girl who was patterned after my daughter, who I had deep conversations with. She's like 8, 9. You know, adults always think that little kids understand everything. Well, they don't. But you tell them things because you want to be able to say, well, I told them and I've done what I was supposed to do. So I said to her, why do you put a shirt on your head? You have the greatest hair. You have great hair. Because her hair in the summer, in the sun, she's kind of redhead. So she'd get like reddish, blondish, you know, nappy hair. You know, but it was beautiful. And so she'd put a shirt on her head and want to have long hair like everybody else. I was like, but your hair is so cool. And I thought, but I've explained all of this. And then this little girl in my head said, yeah, but it doesn't mean anything to me.
I always wondered how much of that was you as a little girl sort of coming to terms with sort of the images you were seeing.
Nah, that's Michael. Listen, I was not aware, you know, as a little girl that I was missing. I didn't realize that I was missing. I knew I was missing, but it wasn't conscious, you know. And I figured that out much later on, because when they did the reboot of Star Trek, because I love horror movies. I love horror movies. I love sci-fi. I love everything. So I said to LeVar Burton, because he said, oh, I just got cast in Star Trek. I said, they're doing Star Trek? Oh my God, tell them I want to play. So a year goes by, I hear nothing, and I see him again. I said, did you tell me? He said, yeah, but they didn't believe me. I said, do you have a phone number? He said, who do you want to call? I said, let's call Gene Roddenberry. So he said, you want me to just call Gene Roddenberry? I said, well, I'll talk to whoever, but I need to be part of this. So I say, I want to have a meeting. Can I come in and can I explain why? And they say, sure. And I think in my head now, they thought, this bitch is crazy. She is never going to come do this show. She's a movie person. She's not. So I go, and Gene Roddenberry says to me, okay, you have to explain this to me. I said, what? He says, why do you want to do this? I said, Gene, do you know that before Lieutenant Uhura, black people didn't exist in the future? He said, what? I said, no, it's true. It's true. No science fiction existed with us in any of the movies, in anything. We're just not there. This is the first time we appear in the future. And I said, not only do we appear in the future, but this is a gorgeous woman, and she's the communications officer. I said, you did this in 1963. Did you not know? Did you not know this was like earth-shattering? I said, you knew something was happening because when you went to show that the kiss between Captain Kirk, and you knew you couldn't show it and such, so you knew something was up. But no, we don't exist. He said, I can't believe this. So he says, let me think about where I could put you and what we might be able to do. I say, okay. 2 days later, he calls and he says, I've gone through everything. And there are no black people before Uhura in the future.
And you were the one who called it his attention.
Yeah, it didn't,
Wow.
because Gene's world,
I think the Bobbies are here.
in Gene's world, if you have the future, then you have everyone present. That's how he thought, including Klingons and all the other species. What are those? Tribbles? You know, I mean, this all came out of his head. So for him, the world was united. So I said, I want to be that for somebody else. I want to be that person that brings a different dimension. So he said, okay, well, I'm going to put you in this bar, and I want to name you after Texas Guinan, who was a New York, cabaret owner who came out with her 6 guns and used to bang, 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 hello, suckers. I said, do I get to do that? He said, no, you don't get to do that. But that's why I wanted to do Star Trek. How did I get there?
No, because I was asking about sort of the little girl with the shirt on her head, and how that might have reflected your sense of identity when you were little.
But I knew, because I loved sci-fi, that I didn't see other people. I didn't know I was gone until I saw Uhura. And I thought, oh, I could be there too. Well, why aren't I?
So getting back to your one-woman show, which has this array of characters, both genders, races, ages, disabilities. Yeah. I mean, you disappear into all of these characters. So
I used to be very good. I used to be a really good actor.
Used to be, stop.
Yeah, no, it's, I had a different groove then. And it was really something to see.
So talk about the initial reception of what was then called The Spook Show.
People loved The Spook Show when I did it the first time. People kept saying, I don't understand what it means. I was like, do you know this book, The Spook, that's sat by the door? It's about a guy who disappears into his, hadn't heard of. So I said, well, that's why it's called The Spook Show. And so I did it, and I had lots of characters, and I honed them, and they were fun. And the little girl who, goes to the beach, because nobody will help her or comfort her when she finds herself pregnant, who does what women did in the old days, which is why they tried to make abortion safe and clean, because women used to do damage to themselves and the fetus with a hanger. And I wanted people to remember that. And
the brilliant reveal that she's the way you constructed that she's 14.
Yeah.
You save that for the end, which just is like devastating.
Because things happen to people at all ages, and you don't ever want anybody to have to go through that. You want people to feel like they can come to you, particularly young women. You want them to be able to come to you and say, this is what's happening with me. And she goes to the confessional, and she goes to the church, and she goes to all the people you're supposed to go to, and nobody was there for her. And I just felt like people needed to remember the why of this. It wasn't about religion. It's never been about religion, And the same with my differently abled friend. I lived, as I said, in Berkeley, and so we had the Center for, what was it called? Center for, it'll come to me. But it was right on Shattuck Avenue, and it was where all the folks who were differently able demanded for the first time, put a dip. My wheelchair cannot go up. That came out of there.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I believe Berkeley was the first place where, folks got militant and said, listen, we're here. So I'm doing these characters, and a friend of mine who he was probably 6'8". He had an accident on his motorcycle. Big old dude, too, and was a paraplegic. We're leaving somewhere, and he comes rolling up on me, and he says, okay, how come I'm not represented here? Why aren't you doing a character like me? I was like, he said, what, you don't think, I said, no, yeah, but let me work on it, Ralph. Let me say. And so that's how the differently abled woman came. And in talking to folks over time and talking about who you are when you dream, and we all appear to be different in our dreams. We all appear to think, if I was, if I'm, 5'4", and I think, would you be 6'2" and to have long, gorgeous hair, and there you are in your dream, and you're thinking, is that me? That looks really weird, because in your dream that you're kind of dreaming, but you're doing stuff. You're flying, or you suddenly made $1 billion and you're living in some weird place. Anything can happen. So that's what prompted her to be the dancer in her dream, because dancing to me is the most elegant thing. Elegant way you can move. And so that's how she came about. So most of these characters were not necessarily me, but they came out of experiences with other people. Some I just made up, like the old raisin and the Jamaican lady. That's just a made up one, just because I like the idea of that commercial. Come back. Do you remember? Come back to Jamaica. I just and I wanted to do an accent, because all of this happened because people weren't hired. They wouldn't hire me to do stuff.
So then how did Mike Nichols come to see this show and get involved?
So I got a letter of invitation from Dance Theater Workshop. They said they were doing a monologist series, and would I mind joining them? And I was like, what? But y'all are in New York. You're in New York. You want to come back to New York? Because I hadn't been back. And, they're right in my neighborhood. They're in Chelsea. So I thought, okay, I could go stay with my mother. This could be really good. And that'll be fun. At the same time, my daughter and I are driving along in our VW Bug, and we hear on NPR Alice Walker reading excerpts from The Color Purple. So my daughter and I stop, and we pull over, and we listen. We listen to this reading, and she's really great. And my kid says, that sounds like a really interesting book. I was like, yeah, it does. So she says, we should get it. We should get it. We should read it. And so we did. Now she's like 10, but she's interested in everything. So I get the book, and, we read it, and it's really something. And I write a letter to Alice Walker, to the publisher. And my name is Whoopi Goldberg, and I'm an actor, and this is what I do, characters. And if they ever make a movie of this, I would like to play Dust on the Floor. And I send it on. What's going to happen? She's never going to get the letter. I feel better. And it's groovy. And I think I must have. I said, maybe if you write me back, I'm not going to be here because I'm going to New York with the shows that I do, and here's my address. That's right. Here's my address. Very cheeky. Here's my address. So now comes the time, and I'm going to New York, and it's like I'm really nervous, but it's going to be great. And I arrive in New York, and I get to my mom's house. She said, "Oh, there's a letter for you. There's a letter for you here." And I said, "A letter?" And I get it, and it's a purple envelope. And I look, and I say, I said, "This is from that lady, Alice Walker, that wrote The Color Purple." And I'm looking at it, and my mother says, "Are you ever going to open it?" I said, "I don't know." She says, "Well, I think you should, just to see. Maybe, she's very happy that you wrote her a letter, that you like her book." So I open the letter, and it says, "Dear Whoopi, I'm thrilled that you love the book. Quincy Jones and Steven Spielberg are probably going to be making it as a movie, and I've already sent your stuff to them. I live in Oakland, so I've seen your shows."
She was aware of your show before you came back to New York.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, she'd already known about my show.
didn't know that.
Yeah, she wrote me that letter. So, wait. No, wait. Is that the first? No, maybe it's the second time. Maybe it is the second time. Maybe it is the second time. Yes, I bet it was. So I came and did dance theater workshop, performed, then nobody came the first 2 weeks. I wanted to drink cyanide. My mother wouldn't let me. And then a review in the New York Times by Mel Gussow came out. That's what happened. And if I had been living with this man and giving him the greatest sex of his life, I could not have gotten a better review. I mean, it was amazing. So suddenly now we were, but you couldn't get a seat to the show. So, which brings me to how Mike Nichols got there.
Yeah.
Mike and, can you look up really fast who was in the Broadway version of Hurly Burly for Mike? Because Judith Ivey, never mind, thank you. So,
Good pull.
because I literally owe her everything, and I'll tell you why. So my shows have been going really well. People have been coming. And my mother says to me one night, "Do you want to know anything about who's in an audience?" I said, "No. Don't tell me. It'll just freak me out." She said, "So you don't want to know?" I was like, "No, I don't want to know." She's like, "Because if you did, I could tell you that something." I said, "Don't tell me. Don't tell me." And she said, "Okay, but I think you really should know." I was like, "Okay, enough. Who is it?" She says, "It's Mike Nichols." I said, "It's Mike Nichols is here?" She says, "Yeah." I said, "Oh my God. Is he with Dustin Hoffman?" I was like, "No, he's not. But he is directing, he's got this show, 2 shows coming to Broadway, The Real Thing and Hurly Burly." I said, "Wow. Well, maybe he'll come backstage," I said. She said, "But I don't want you to be disappointed if he doesn't." I said, "Well, now I know he's there, but I don't know what he looks like, so if he doesn't come, it's not going to freak me out." She said, "That's the only way to look at this." So I go out and I do my thing, and I talk about Anne Frank, and I talk about the little girl I tried to do. And so I'm done. I go backstage. I'm in the can, and I hear, and I go, "What is she doing?" And I think, who is that? What is she doing? My mother's just laughing. And I come out, and she says, "Karen," because now she's totally forgot Whoopi. Whoopi's gone. Karen is back. She says, Karen, I'd like you to meet Mr. Nichols. And I say, hi. And he began to cry. And I thought I had done something. And he says, please forgive me. I was on the last ship out of Germany. And I was the same age as Anne Frank, and you brought all that back to me. So he says, listen, I want to talk to you because my friend Judy Ivey, who's in Hurly Burly, who I cast in Hurly Burly, is the reason I'm here, because we made a pact that I would take her to something she'd never seen before, and she'd take me to something I'd never seen before. And he said, I hadn't seen anything like you since myself and Elaine May. And we started talking about other monologists, people that who told stories and why you tell stories and all of this. And so he and I had this incredible conversation. And then he says, very Mike Nichols, do you think you might like to do this on Broadway? And I said, sure, yeah, I would love it, sure. So it was like hugs, and nice to meet you, and blah, blah, blah. And I go on about my business. You know, it was really great. And my mom was like, I can't believe he was weeping. It was the whole thing. So now we come to the end of the run, and lots of people have come to see the show. It was really great. Barbara Barry, who I loved because she was in a film called One Potato, Two Potato, that dealt with interracial relationship, and I think Lily came.
Lily Tomlin.
And, oh, not Lily. Bette Midler came. Oh. And everything I was doing, I was like, oh my God, it's Bette Midler, it's Bette Midler, it's Bette Midler, oh my God, it's Bette Midler, it's Bette Midler, it's Bette Midler, oh my God, it's Bette Midler, it's Bette Midler. Everything I'm doing on my show, but the little eye in the middle of my head is screaming, oh my God, it's Bette Midler, Boogie Boogie Beautiful, oh my God, just out of control. And lots of really great folks came. So now it's over, and I go home. I'm home about 3 weeks, and the phone rings, and I say hello, and I hear Ms. Goldberg, and I said, yeah, Mr. Nichols. I said, hi, how are you? He says, I'm very well. I said, how did you get my phone number? Right, Mike Nichols can get it. He said, I asked the people over at Dance Theater Workshop. He said, do you remember our conversation about Broadway? And I said, yeah. He said, well, have you given it any more thought? Do you have a house you prefer to be in? Or I was like, oh, you were serious? You were serious? I said, I thought you were kidding. He says, I'm absolutely. I said, I don't know if I could do this. I don't know. He said, well, why do you think you couldn't do it? I said, because what if I suck? He says, have you sucked in the past? I said, yeah. He said, well, then it won't be a shock. I said, when would you like to do this? He said, well, I just wanted to make sure that you were serious, and now we'll go and find a house for you. So Manny Eisenberg, yes, and Mike Nichols found a Broadway theater for me to perform in. And I came back, and he said, well, we should change the name. I said, okay. What should we call it? He said, well, why not Whoopi Goldberg on Broadway? I was like, my name? He's like, do you not want people to know where you are? I mean, it was wonderful. He said, would you mind if I directed it? I was like, whatever you want to do. You know what I'm doing, so whatever you want to do is groovy. So he did, and the fourth day, because we're talking about it, he said, what do you love? And so we talked about all kinds, talked about movies and all the stuff that I was into, and then for some reason I talked about Hirschfeld. I didn't know why, but I think I talked about being a little kid looking for the number of the Ninas.
Yeah.
He said, oh. So now, I'm in rehearsal, and he would say things like, Miss Goldberg. I say, yes. Yes. He'd say, is there an end to this story? Or are you just going on? I said, well, I think there's an end to the story, but he said, well, you should pay attention to that. You should pay attention to the ends because you know where they are. So I said, okay. And I then look out, and there's a little couple, two little people about this tall, Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus, just sitting over there. And so during the entire show, I'm working, and they're just sitting there, and they're laughing. And they are adorable. I really just want to put them in my pocket. And so it's the end of rehearsal, and it's great. And he says, come here. So I go over, and he says, I want to introduce you to Hirschfeld. Oh, my God. First of all, he looked like a little tiny Santa Claus. He looked just like, and she looked like Mrs. Claus. They were just, it was amazing because to me, they represented the theater. Right. He in particular was the theater. You hadn't made it until Hirschfeld did, yeah. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm just looking at them and talking to them, and it's kind of phenomenal. So now comes opening night. And I go into my room, and there's a giant poster of Hamlet that was done by Sam. Dun, 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 dun. He played the DA. Waterston. Thank you. Yes, Sam Waterston. Well, he did Hamlet at, what's the theater downtown? The Pap, yes. And I had seen a portion of it on video, and was, he's a brilliant actor, Sam Waterston. So I was just taken with the performance and taken with the poster. And so at some point, I may have mentioned it to him. So I walk in, and there's a giant poster of Hamlet signed by Sam Waterston in my dressing room. And then I flip out about that, and then now I have to go to the bathroom, but I can't go to the bathroom because I'm really freaking out, and I don't know what to do. And I come out, and I don't see this when I come in, but on my couch is my Hirschfeld.
Of you.
Of me, with 41 Ninas, with a finger pointing to the number. I have the most Ninas he's ever done. Is in the drawing he made for me. And he's drawn all of my characters. And so it's all in my hair. And Mike got the original for me. It's very hard not to think you're really good. You know what I mean? When someone believes in what you do, that you know how to do what you do. And so I had a really great beginning with Mike, but I also met other people because of him. Once we went to lunch, he said, you have to come with me. I'm having lunch with Paul and Stephen, and Carl. I'm seeing Paul, Stephen, and Carl for lunch. I said, okay. Because I know people named Paul, Stephen, and Carl too. You know. So I'm thinking this is just like people, you know. So I walk in, and it's Paul Simon, Steve, oh my God, Wild and Crazy Guy, Steve Martin, and Carl Reiner. So I'm sitting at the table like this. And they kind of look at me and go, "You all right?" I said, And I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And then Paul started talking to me about what I was doing, the show and everything, and he was like, "I can't wait to see it." It's like, "Oh, okay." So opening night, Simon and Garfunkel are at the after party. Oh, it's insane. It's insane. And Paul Simon is talking to my mom. And I walk over. And he's saying to my mother, "Listen, Artie and I didn't have as much fun as we could have had with our success. Encourage her to enjoy everything that's happening. Because it's all brand new and she should have a good time. Tell her it's okay." So I said, I am having a good time. He said, no, there's going to come a time when they're going to come after you for going to things and having fun and being brand new and being curious about everything. He said, "Don't ever let anyone take this away from you. Ever." He said, "Because this only happens once. This time only happens once." So that also blends in.
Did that resonate for you in the moment? Or?
Yes, well, because people kept saying weird stuff to me. Like when I came back to do the show, you know, that's when Alice's letter was there. Okay, so that's when that happened. But I remember the people who were doing the press. Nan Leonard was was the press woman with me. And we're walking down the street. And she says to me, she turned to me literally and she said, "I'm going to say this to you because show's about to open. But this is the last time you're going to be able to walk down the street like this. This is the end of that. Because once they find out about you, it's going to change everything." Wow. And it changed everything, but not the way I thought it was going to change it. Because I thought, because you know when you're starving artist, you say to your friends or whatever, whoever makes it first brings everybody else through. Like, you know, we want to go over here and have lunch, or we want to go do this, and whoever makes it arranges that. And my friends didn't wait for me to change. They changed. And so it became about, oh, you have different friends now. It's like, no, they're new friends, but so that was the first traumatic thing, was discovering that people weren't waiting